Progressive challengers have ousted 3 incumbent Democrats in primaries just over the past month. 2 of those happened right here in New York City. Brad Lander and Daraliza Avila Chevalier both beat Democratic incumbents and are likely to win their November elections in these deep blue districts. Brad Lander joins me now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I want to ask, we were having these conversations earlier in the show, that there's definitely a leftward shift towards where you are philosophically. It showed up in your primary and others. But in less blue districts, there still are more moderate Democrats being elected, even right here in New York 17, where Republican Mike Lawler is the congressman. Kate Connolly won the same day you did. So do you think that progressives like yourself could actually win in a place that isn't deep, deep blue?
Well, I don't think the line really so much should be thought of as progressives versus moderates. To me, it's fighters versus folders. People are fed up with the status quo. They don't feel it's working for them. And that's true for working families in more moderate or frontline districts. Look at someone like Pat Ryan in the Hudson Valley, who's been fighting on utility costs and just showing people I'm out there fighting for working families. And that's what I think can unite us. Whether you use Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, or whether you say, let's go confront the utility company that's bilking us, that's the energy all Democrats need to bring this fall.
One of the big reasons you won your primary here is that you separated yourself from the incumbent Democrat Dan Goldman on Israel. You use the term genocide. He does not. You don't want to have the U.S. funding Israel militarily. You call yourself a liberal Zionist. What is a liberal Zionist?
I believe in the vision of a Jewish and democratic Israel. I care about the place, but I don't think it's possible for it to be democratic while it's occupying the West Bank and Gaza. And I don't think that Israel's conduct in Gaza, which I do consider a genocide, is consistent with Jewish values. So to me, it's like you stand up and you call it as you see it. I don't want to keep sending U.S. military aid to Israel while it's violating international law and Palestinian human rights. But I want it to actually honor international law and Palestinian human rights so it can be the Jewish and democratic Israel that I grew up believing in.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. You said that you don't think it's a democratic Israel?
I want it to be a Jewish and democratic Israel. Right now, I don't think it's modeling democracy while it occupies the West Bank and Gaza and half the people under its sovereignty can't vote. But I believe that when occupation ends, then it can be Jewish and democratic, and that's what I am going to be I'm fighting for.
Why are you not just a Zionist? Why do you say liberal Zionist? What do you think the difference is?
I mean, the Declaration of Independence that founded Israel says it would be a place for the ingathering of exiles and full civil and political rights for everyone living there. But Palestinians living in the West Bank facing settler terrorism, or living in refugee camps in Gaza because their schools and hospitals were destroyed, they don't have full political and civil rights. So it is not living up to its founding vision. And to me, believing in Jewish and democratic means you got to fight for the human rights of Palestinians at the same time as you fight for the safety of Jews. I guess maybe a shorthand way of saying it is, I don't think Israelis will be safe until Palestinians are free, and they both need that.
Can I just ask you point blank? Do you not call yourself a Zionist because it is a term that many people on the hard left have started to use as a slur against Jews?
Well, no, I mean, a liberal Zionist is a Zionist. I just want to make clear I'm not a Zionist like Ben Gvir or Smotrich who want to eliminate Palestinians. So that's why I say it.
You can be an American and not believe in what Donald Trump believes in.
To me, that's what I am here. I believe in the vision of a Jewish and democratic Israel, but it's got to change if it's going to be that. Just like, yes, this country.
Can I ask you one other question on this? Because you talked about genocide and you talked about occupying Gaza. And I've also heard you talk about the fact that Israel went too far after October 7th. What would you have wanted Israel to do when a bunch of civilians, about 1,200, maybe 900 civilians, also members of the military, kibbutzniks, these were peaceniks like you, who lived on the border with Gaza because they were desperate for Palestinian rights, and they were murdered brutally. if you were asked what would you do in response, what would you have done?
I mean, let me first clarify. I think Hamas committed an act of genocidal terrorism on October 7th, and there had to be a response. I mean, priority one should have been return of the hostages, getting them back to their families, and that I think would have been done faster with a political deal. And yes, accountability for the Hamas militants who conducted October 7th, 100%.
They claim
but not
that
killing 5,000 Palestinian kids under
and
5 and
says,
destroying.
when Israel says that they tried hard to avoid this, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, the civilians, but Hamas is so evil that it hid those terrorists and the weapons inside civilian population centers.
War crimes don't justify other war crimes, and destroying every single school and hospital and mosque and community center in Gaza and still occupying 70% of Gaza, in addition to being a violation of international law, is just not working. This isn't actually going to make Israelis safe.
Can I ask you about today? You endorsed Abdul al-Sayed, who's running against Haley Stevens in Michigan. They're running to be the Democratic nominee for Senate there. He was asked by my colleague Isaac Dovere if someone could be a Zionist and a progressive. Here's what he said. Every definition of a Jewish state ends up in some articulation of illiberal values, every single one. How did you square what you just said about believing in the notion of a democratic Israel and what he said, which is there is no such thing?
I mean,
as
we
possibility.
disagree on that. That's how I square it. Now, we
And
agree
it's not
on a
important
lot
enough
of.
for you that
well,
you would say that doesn't
I
earn
met
my
Abdul
endorsement?
through our dear mutual friend Adi Barkan, this amazing activist who died of ALS, courageously championing Medicare for all. And I don't think anybody's going to fight as hard to fulfill Adi's vision of healthcare for everybody as Abdul al-Sayed and fight to get money out of politics. We disagree on this. Now, I believe that he cares about fighting for the safety of Jews in Michigan and the human rights and dignity of Israelis. He believes in a binational state with equal rights for all its people. I believe in two states, one majority of Jews with equal rights for its Palestinian minority, one a majority of Palestinians with equal rights for its minority Jews.
You're going to have to get
That's
Hamas
a
out for
difference. Of course we are, and a lot else is going to have to change. We're going to have to get Netanyahu out and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich out and Hamas out. It's a difference that we have, but at the base level, you don't compromise on anyone's humanity. And
you don't think by him not believing in what you believe in the notion of a Jewish state of Israel compromises your humanity?
I don't. I mean, he's been clear that he wants full and equal civil rights and human rights for Israelis and Palestinians and for Jews. We have a difference in how we approach achieving it, but I believe that there's a room to work together.
Just one other question on the question of Zionism, because I've been listening to some of the podcasts that you're on and watching some of your interviews, and you talk about how you get attacked from the left, of which you are a part, being called a Zionist baby killer, and on the right, or maybe in the Jewish world, calling you a capo, which for people who don't know, those were the Jews who were helping keep the peace, so to speak, in the Nazi concentration camps. And I ask this because this word Zionist has been turned into a slur by a lot of people. And you talk about how you have experienced that yourself. Deborah Lipstadt, who is a world-renowned scholar on these issues, I asked her, she said, I do believe that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. However, I also believe that anti-Zionism has morphed into its own kind of demonization and hatred, a prejudice all its own.
So I disagree with that also. I mean, Zionist can be used as a slur, and believe me, if you look in my mentions, I hear it that way. But my son, is named after this guy, Marek Edelman, who was a Bundist, a Jewish democratic socialist in the Warsaw Ghetto, who helped lead the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. Like that. So seriously, I take the legacy of Jews who fought Nazis. He was not a Zionist. He didn't believe in a sovereign Jewish state. Even Albert Einstein, who they asked to be the president of Israel, wanted it to be safe for Jewish life in present Israel and Palestine, but he worried that Jewish sovereignty would have dangerous consequences. So there are anti-Zionists who are members of my synagogue, who I can tell you are absolutely not anti-Semitic, who care about the safety of Jews, who don't believe that the state is making Jews safer. That's not my position, but I don't think it's anti-Semitic.
Let's look ahead to 2028. What do you expect and want from a Democratic candidate for president?
First and foremost, a vision of an economy that works for working people, a vision for healthcare and housing and childcare that people can afford. Folks are desperate. They feel the system is rigged against them. Now they see like AI data centers poisoning their water and taking their jobs. A vision that works for working people. A vision for political reform. We're going to have to do something about the Supreme Court, about gerrymandering, about money in politics. And also a hopeful energy, I have to tell you, like what's been moving in New York since the Knicks won and we have the World Cup. There's a hopeful energy that Mayor Mamdani's been able to tap into. I wanted something like that for our country as a whole.
Going back to our discussion before, there are, I think, at least a trio, maybe more, of potential candidates in 2028 who are Jewish. You have Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, J.B. Pritzker, Illinois, Senator Ossoff, senator from Georgia, and Rahm Emanuel. They're all critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu, but they all believe in Israel's right to exist and have stopped short of calling what's happening in Gaza genocide. Do you think that somebody with those views and that religion could be the nominee for president in the Democratic Party?
I do. I think it's going to require clarity that we need a reset in the U.S. relationship with Israel. I think saying we're not going to continue to provide the 2,000-pound bombs that destroyed Gaza, that we're going to insist on human rights and international law compliance, and we're going to stop aid until that happens, and that Israel has to step up to recognizing that what's necessary is self-determination for Palestinians and Israelis, a horizon of political mutual recognition and peace. Look, and I'm happy to explain to any of them why I think Raphael Lemkin, the Polish Jew and Holocaust survivor who developed the term genocide, the Lemkin Institute considers what's happening there a genocide, like Omer Bartov, an amazing Israeli Holocaust scholar.
So is that a litmus test?
I don't think it's a litmus test. I think it's something useful for people to look at and grapple and reckon with. We've spent thousands of years as the victims. It's a rough grappling with what it means in some ways to be a perpetrator. I think it's a useful dialogue for American Jews to have, but I don't think it's a litmus test in the presidential race. I do think a reset in the U.S.-Israel relationship is.
Brad Lander, thanks for sticking around. Thank you for coming in.